Good evening. I'm Nahjee Grant, and you're watching On the Rise. I'm pleased to welcome to the program a certified public accountant and founder of Anna Sachs CPA LLC, Anna Sachs. Anna, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Just tell me a little bit about your business, how long you've been in business, and how you got started.
Well, about 3 years ago, I decided to start my own certified public accounting firm. Prior to that, I had been a partner in a firm in Ballackinwood, and I decided to go out on my own. I had a 1-year-old son and wanted some more flexibility as a working mom, and so I started my own firm with just a small group of clients, and I have now grown large enough to have my own office space in Ardmore on Lancaster Avenue, and I work with individuals and small businesses all around in the 5-county area.
So, do you work by yourself, or you just?
I do. It's just me. I'm a sole proprietor. Maybe that'll change one day as things grow and change, but right now I do everything. All of my own administrative work, all the tax, all the accounting work, and I enjoy it. It gives me a chance to kind of control the process from soup to nuts. I do all the interaction with my clients. I'll meet with them either in my office or I'll go to their home or business, collect their information. I do, during tax season, of course, most of what I do is tax returns. But then on a year-round basis, I do bookkeeping, special projects for clients, budgeting, tax projections, answering questions, quarterly accounting for businesses, things like that.
So you're not just always in your office?
No, I enjoy, actually, that's one of the things I enjoy about being on my own is that I can go out to see my clients, which I think it's helpful, especially in working with business clients, to be in the office and actually see their operation, maybe give them some ideas for improving how they're running things. And I think that's really helpful to be able to go to their place of business. It saves them time, and also they're more comfortable being in their own office, sometimes meeting with me. They have all their records there. And I think that's a really good thing.
Well, I'll tell you, right out of high school, I was actually wanting to be an accountant. I took one class at Villanova.
That was all it took.
That's all it took. And that was all it took, and I've never looked back.
Yeah.
Looked back since. So I definitely commend you for being one for as long as you've been. How long have you been doing?
I've kind of always been doing tax and accounting work. My mom worked for a tax company many years ago, and so that's what I started doing when I started working in high school. When I started working after school, I started doing administrative work, and then I started learning about taxes back as a teenager, and it's kind of all I've ever done. But I'm a very organized, kind of very detailed person, and I think you have to have that kind of personality to be an accountant. I don't consider myself a very creative person. I couldn't do what you do. I would not make it. So
that's why I appreciate that. I can't do what you do, so you're on the same level as that. One of the things that I guess is like the perception that accountants, other than with businesses, like they're only needed around like tax time.
Right.
Like I said, you're year-round.
I am. I stay busy year-round. Of course, much busier during tax season because that's when all the what we call compliance work hits, where you're doing all of the tax returns and getting everything filed timely or getting extensions done. But more and more people are going on extension for various reasons because they're waiting for information that isn't available by April 15th, or for businesses, sometimes they want to go on extension because they're waiting for information to close their books. So more and more I'm doing work into the summer for tax returns that are on extension, and then also by the time second quarter hits, I'm into mid-year accounting for my business clients, and then of course I told you I do like bookkeeping and special projects year-round, and I also do a little bit of work with family law attorneys, with regard to different impacts of divorce. So I'll help do tax calculations and things like that for attorneys that are working with divorcing couples.
Okay.
And that can be year-round as well. So.
Okay. So is there one area that you don't get into?
I don't really do payroll specifically. I think it's not cost-effective. So I personally generally don't do payroll. For my business clients, I will link them up with a payroll company. That's generally much more efficient and cost-effective for me and for them. I don't really do any nonprofit work. I know that's something we were talking about before the show. To me, it's the kind of thing that we kind of need to get into it and do a little bit of it. And I think think it's better to, if there are certain areas where you're only going to do one or two things, to just stay out of it and let someone who's more experienced do that. And I mostly enjoy working with the individuals and small businesses.
Okay.
And I do trusts and estates and things like that as well.
Okay.
But I tend to stay away from doing a lot of nonprofit work. And I also don't do any auditing. I can do reviews and compilations. Being on my own, there really isn't room in my schedule for me to do a lot of audit work. So I tend not to do audits, but I have firms that I can refer business clients to if they need an audit. Most of the clients that I work with tend not to need audits because they're generally privately held businesses along the main line, and there really isn't a need for them to have an audit. So it's kind of a good fit anyway. Very rarely does it come up where I have anyone that I work with that needs an audit, so it kind of fits anyway.
Okay. How has your profession changed at all, like over the years, with the rise of these different online businesses like TurboTax? And I know there's obviously a few other ones. How has that changed when people are doing their accounting or tax work on their own? As opposed to
well, yeah, it's definitely changed. I think there are different cycles. You know, there are people who want to do their own return regardless, and in the old days they would do it by hand, and now they might try a program like TurboTax. I think it weeds out to some extent clients that are a good fit for a sole proprietorship accounting firm like me or not. There are people that are able to do their own return on TurboTax but still like to come to an accountant because they appreciate having someone who knows the laws and the rules more inside and out than just what the program can walk them through. And not that it's a bad program. You know, for many people it's adequate and it's all they need, but then there are people that appreciate having someone that they can talk to about different issues that are going on in their lives that have tax implications or financial implications, and they like having a team of advisors. You know, they may have an attorney that did their will, they may have a financial advisor or an investment advisor, and then they like having an accountant that works with their other team of professionals. And with me being a sole proprietor and being a small independent practitioner, I can bill at a competitive rate where it's cost effective for them to not necessarily worry about buying the TurboTax program and spending the hours they would need to doing the work themselves. You know, they appreciate having someone they can go to. So it has an impact, but I think it doesn't really change the type of client that's going to wind up coming to me anyway.
Now you mentioned a little bit about like the freedom of opening your own, having your own. Have you you've been a part of a firm before?
I was a part of a firm, well, all my life until I opened my own firm.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, obviously you prefer opening up your own.
Of course, it's always scary in the beginning, but now I really enjoy it, and I can see all the possibilities for future growth and expansion, and being able to get into all different types of things. And I don't think I would ever go back. I think most people are that way that have ever gone out on their own and opened their own practice in whatever they might do. Most of the time, for a number of years anyway, they don't tend to go back. They enjoy being on their own and exploring different opportunities in their field. And
what were some of the you opened it up in March?
No, the end of 2012 I went out on my own. So I'm in my third year now. Prior to getting my office space on Lancaster Avenue in Ardmore, I worked from home. And that gave me the flexibility to kind of be there for my son, who was just 1 and 2 years old at that time. Now he's a little bit older, he's in preschool, and also I've found that I need more space. And I also kind of like separating the home and the office. And I also like having a place that clients can come to. So, you know, being that I'm kind of into my third year now, it was time to expand and look for office space. And that I've had since the summer, since May of this year.
What are some of the skill sets that you didn't know you may have needed before when opening your own firm?
Gosh. I think the technical skills that you have don't really change when you're working for a firm or when you're on your own. I think the difference is in not having anyone around to talk over different things with. The nice part about being in a firm is that there's always somebody next to you that you can say, hey, I have this situation, what do you think of it? And now I'm on my own, I don't necessarily have that, so you have to be a little bit more self-reliant in terms of doing tax research, and kind of knowing who you can ask questions and kind of building your network of professionals so that you have someone that you can call and ask a question if you want to bounce an idea off of another professional. So that's sort of the biggest drawback to being out on your own, is that you don't have that team of people around you supporting you. And also, when you take work on, you have to look at the cost effectiveness of the work and decide, okay, I'll be doing everything. I don't have a staff person that I can hand this work off to and then review it. I'll be doing all of this work. And that's sort of a difference in being out on your own. But as I grow, I will certainly look to bring someone on board that I can train and work with, and so that'll be in the next couple of years, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I had some of the previous guests, like say when they opened up their own business, they just became like not only, like for example, the accountant, they became the president, vice president,
exactly,
the janitor, the manager, everything.
Well, of course, being that what I do is a little bit of a business background anyway, I think I already had a lot of the skills in terms of knowing, I know a little bit about, reading a lease, I know a little bit about running an office, I know a little bit about budgeting, whether it's personal or budgeting for my own firm now in terms of income and expenses. Being that what I do is a little bit of a business background, I have the advantage of kind of knowing some of those skills anyway. So now it's more like, as I hire someone, it'll be HR skills and different skills like that I'll be learning.
Right. So other than with accounting, have you had any prior background in business other than accounting?
Well, most of what I've ever done has been tax and accounting. I worked very briefly for an insurance company years ago, and then in college I studied economics, which is sort of a business background. So it's kind of all I've ever done in one field or another. Many years ago I worked for a company and I did accounting and tax work just for medical practices, and I really enjoyed that. And a lot of my clients now are professional service clients. They're doctors or dentists or architects or lawyers. And
you've always been in law marrying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So as far as for your accounting career,
yes,
you've always been law marrying.
Yes.
Okay.
So I know a lot of people in the area. I'm very involved in the community, and I'm proud of that. Over the years, I've gotten more or less involved. When I had my son, I had cut back for a while, but I'm very involved with the Ardmore Rotary Club. I'm involved in the Mainline Chamber of Commerce. I'm involved with the Ardmore Initiative now and the Ardmore Business Association. I love to volunteer, and I love to meet other people. So I'm always going to networking events, and that's how I meet a lot of my potential new clients. And of course, there's a lot now with online, with social media.
Right.
But I think it's still helpful to meet people in person, even if you reconnect with them online. I think it's helpful to always have a face and a personal relationship with somebody.
Right, right. So let's backtrack for a sec.
Sure.
So for your education, so did you go to school law marrying as well?
No, I've only lived in this area about 15, 16 years now. I grew up in Virginia, and I went to school in Virginia to a small, at that time it was a small women's college. It's now gone co-ed.
Okay.
And that's where
like many of them.
Yeah, well, just for financial viability, they needed to do that a few years ago. But that's where I went to college, and that's where I got my degree in economics.
Okay. What's a big a similarity and a big difference between Virginia and law marrying?
In Virginia where I lived was a smaller community, so fewer accounting firms, of course. I think it probably would have been harder to start my own business there just because everyone kind of already had an accountant, knew somebody, and I think it might have been harder to start my own firm there, I'm not sure. But definitely just here you're in a much larger metropolitan area.
Right.
And even though Lower Merion itself is a small community, especially now with social media, people are, a click away. So
right.
I think that's the big difference. And I guess it's a little bit of a slower pace down there. Here, people are more in a hurry all the time. But I enjoy the area. I think it's a good fit for me.
Mm-hmm. If no worries in the world, you can do anything, would it still be as an accountant, or?
Probably. I would certainly, if I won the lottery, I would certainly probably hire people, expand my office size, maybe cut back on how much I do. I love to travel, so I'd probably take the opportunity to travel more. But I would always want to stay busy professionally, and I think that I would probably always do accounting. I don't know that there's ever anything else I've really enjoyed doing professionally. I think it's a good fit for someone who's sort of detail-oriented like me. I think doing tax and accounting work is good because I can pick up on things that are wrong very quickly because it's just part of my nature and my personality.
Well, one of the things that I was talking with the previous guest on was with, like, so when I mentioned before, like TurboTax, right? It's just like the rise of just information that's available online. Do you get people who think that they know more about your profession than you do?
Always, and they tend to kind of be people that wouldn't come to me as a client anyway. Sometimes they will call with just a question, or they'll want to verify something they read online, but the kind of person who is generally going to have an attitude like that is usually not someone who is really looking for a relationship with an accountant. Where I found that it makes my job harder is sometimes in the media there'll be just a blurb on TV like, you know, did you know you can write off XYZ? Well, okay, and the fine print is all the detail. Well, yes, if this applies, this applies, this applies, and this applies, but all people read is the big headline, and so they'll come to me and say, well, I heard I could write off XYZ. I'm like, well, yes, but did you read the fine print under the... So that's where I've found, you know, for people who read or know a lot about what's going on, they'll read the headlines, but you need to go beyond that, and that's where I can come in and be helpful, because I'm like, well, no, you can't do that. You need to do this, this, and this to qualify for that. Oh, well, it didn't say that. I'm like, well, that's the everything is a headline anymore, or a tagline, but you need to dig beyond that.
Right. How has some of your earlier experiences helped you pursue your career path when you were in college?
Well, I think you know, even though what I do now really has nothing directly to do with economics, I think just having a background and understanding how money flows, and, you know, government and the tax system and what drives businesses to succeed or fail, I think just overall that gave me a good background for then the nuts and bolts of actual debits and credits and balance sheets. Many people can do the math of a tax return or the math of putting together a trial balance, but then being able to take that and help a client to run their business better or to manage their personal finances better is sort of that next step that I think having an accountant is good for.
What is it about, you know, like maybe your industry, you know, that keeps you going just through the highs and lows, like through the market, or just running your own business, and besides your son? Now that's a given, right? You got to maintain it. You know, but other than that, like what keeps you going as an accountant for so many years?
Well, the old phrase is that two things in life are certain: death and taxes. So it seems to kind of be a profession that is kind of safe, I guess, unless they pass a flat tax, which even then I think there would probably be so many exceptions to it that people would still need accountants. But I think that what's frustrating about my industry is that quite often tax law changes are passed at the last minute. And so one of the things that is difficult about tax season anymore is that it's very compressed. There's so much information that isn't available to clients until the middle of February, but filing deadlines are still the same. So you're all of a sudden, you know, we used to be able to start our work back in January, and we can still do a lot of what we do in the early part of tax season, but so much information now doesn't come out until the middle of February, and then we're getting amended information at the beginning of March, and you're trying to get everything that you used to get done in 3.5 months. Now all of a sudden you're getting it done in a month or a month and a half, and that's very difficult. And then, you know, several of the last few years they've passed changes at the very end of the year, things that are then retroactive back to the beginning of the year, and you're waiting and watching, are they going to pass this, are they not, how will this impact this individual or this business? You're doing last minute planning right at the end of the year. year because something might be changing. That's a little bit frustrating about my industry. But I think it also, it keeps us working, if you will, because there are so many changes. That is what keeps the accounting profession going to some extent. Aside from on the accounting end of it, what we do is helpful to clients for running their business and having good financials to work with. But on the tax side of what I do, I think because the more and more changes there are, the more and more your TurboTax people give up and just come to an accountant because they don't even want to try and figure it out anymore unless they are a very simple return where the program can walk them through it. I have clients that have done their own return through TurboTax. All you have to do is answer one question wrong if you don't quite understand what it means, and it'll steer you in a whole other direction.
Right.
Not the program's fault, not your fault. You just may not know the background behind why the question maybe in the program is asking what it's asking, and you can have a completely incorrect tax return. So I think the more changes there are, it does kind of keep me working because people are then more likely to just give up and come to an accountant.
What's good to be in a profession where you're always needed.
Yes, yes.
So one of the things that you mentioned, and I heard you mention, was IRS. And I know that for a lot of people, that's like just the evil government corporation, right? So do you deal with them on a regular basis?
Well, when needed. When clients get tax notices, I correspond with the IRS, and of course, when I sign off on tax returns, whenever you as a paid preparer are signing a tax return, generally the client marks the box that if there's ever an issue on that tax return, you can call the IRS on the client's behalf and deal with that. I've represented clients before when they've been, audited, or, many times the IRS does it's like a mini audit. They'll send you a letter and they'll question just specific items on your tax return. They'll look for background or proof on on a college deduction, or they'll look for background and proof on a retirement plan contribution. So they're just kind of auditing like one line or another on your tax return. So I'll help clients, I'll put together a response letter and we'll gather the necessary information and send it back. So I do kind of represent clients before the IRS.
Okay.
And, generally, the less you have to deal with the IRS, the better, because it means they're not getting a notice and they're not getting audited. So
exactly.
And Pennsylvania as well, of course, the PA Department of Revenue.
Okay. So are they as bad as people think they are?
It all depends. I mean, by and large, most of what we do is never questioned or audited, and I think especially if you do a good job and you're, putting things together and it's reasonable. Of course, there are also just random audits too. And so if you get a bad auditor, if you're getting audited, if you get someone who is difficult to work with, of course, it can be an awful experience. I've actually had audit type experiences that were somewhat reasonable. You sit down and say, hey, this is this, 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 and this, and they're like, oh, okay, I see everything was done correctly, and they're fine. So it just depends on who you wind up working with.
Okay. So you mentioned, obviously, you've been open on your own.
I've been on my own for about 3 years now.
About 3 years, and then you just opened your new office.
I opened actual office space about 6 months ago.
About 6 months ago in Lancaster.
In Lancaster, yes, right in downtown Ardmore.
Downtown Ardmore. 5 years from now, where does CPA look like?
Hopefully a bigger office space. There's only so much you can do on your own without having someone working with you. I mean, at some point, there's only so many hours in the day, no matter how hard you work. There will be a maximum number of clients that I can work with and still stay completely independent on my own without any employees. So I think the next step will be for me to hire someone. And at that point, I'd love to stay geographically right in the same area. Whether a space opens up in my building or down the street, I'd love to geographically stay close to where I am now, because I love Ardmore and I love the downtown area, and I think there's a lot of revitalization going on in Ardmore, and it's exciting to be part of that. But I would definitely need a somewhat larger space if I were to bring someone on. But I think that's probably the next step in maybe about 2 years or so.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Well, it's definitely a commendable profession. Like I said, I did one class, and I never went back. And I told the teacher, still looking at me like, where did Nahjee go? Like six years later, forget about it. For people to get in contact with you, how can they do that? My email address is AJ Sachs
at AJSACHSCPA.com. And my business phone number is 610-642-1146. My office, again, is in Ardmore, right above, it's 24 West Lancaster, and I'm on the second floor. I'm right above what used to be Gymboree, for many old-timers that are familiar with where Gymboree was, a couple doors down from what used to be the Philadelphia Sports Club. Prior to that, many years ago, the movie theater. That's generally email or phone is the best way to reach me.
Okay, that's great. Well, definitely thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
I learned a lot, more than I did from that one class, and maybe since you have a forward-looking outlook on the business, come by and we'll talk again.
Great, sounds good. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, once again, thank you for tuning in to On the Rise, and thank you again to Anna. And until next time, see you then.